Ashish Thakkar is the founder of Mara Group. He argues that the key to success is to combine the best of global standards with the best of local knowledge. Thakkar spoke on the role of young African entrepreneurs.
How do you get the best of global and combine it with the best of local? You don't need to reinvent the wheel of what's been done in other parts of the world, but at the same time, we can learn from their mistakes and do it even better. We don't need to follow the same growth trends that the West has done, or even other emerging markets have had to be through. And hence, we can truly, I know it's a overused phrase, but we can truly leapfrog in so many different ways. And the third thing is genuinely being institutional. As a family group, I mean, the group is 100% family held even till now as Mara Group, the holding business. Being institutional is extremely important. Having the right level of governance, even though you are privately held or even 100% personally held or family held, like is the case in our case, but having the right governance structures and discipline and institutional framework around you is very, very important, but not losing the entrepreneurial edge that you must remain with. We have 4 businesses today: banking, real estate, infrastructure, and technology. Spread across 25 countries across our continent. Atlas Mara, who our wonderful chairman is here, Arnold Ekpe, was a great journey, which is only less than 2.5 years old. Bob Diamond and I met in South Africa at the World Economic Forum in Cape Town about over 3 years ago, and realized very quickly that Bob's passion for Africa, but even real understanding of banking and global financial services, but particularly African financial services, and Mara's deep local understanding and operational expertise, creating a combination of this could be something quite exciting. And Bob, Arnold, and I did quite a bit of running around in the late 2013, and that's when we listed Atlas Mara in December 2013. It's been less than 2.5 years. We've got a $2.5 billion balance sheet, presence across 7 countries in Africa. And we've always said to ourselves that we want to be a positive, disruptive force in line with public policy. I've been on the receiving side as an SME throughout my career, where the traditional banking model has been taking customers' deposits, putting it into government treasury, making 1,000 to 1,200 basis point spreads, and not lending to businesses. And that's a big missing link. And being on that receiving side, I faced that firsthand. So as Atlas Mara, our theme and vision and aim is to become a real bank for business. And we're not a flag planting exercise. We're not going to go across the continent. We're going to be in selective markets where we can actually move the needle and play a meaningful role in the markets that we're in. And I think there's such a huge opportunity. Our continent has created mobile money, as all of you know. M-Pesa has been phenomenal and has changed so many things. And I think we sometimes skip over the fact that we must give credit to a lot of our regulators and governments who enabled mobile money to actually work. If you think about other emerging markets, such as India, mobile money is still not legal there. And that's why our governments and our regulators have actually enabled us to be innovative and try new things. When mobile money was introduced, when M-Pesa was introduced, there was a lot of loopholes in the system where it could be misused for the wrong things. But that kept on getting strengthened and improved. Mobile money has been phenomenal, and it has been telecom operator-led. But now it's time for the next big thing, which is creating mobile banking, but it needs to be financial institution-led and not telecom operator-led. Similarly, the whole global and local, we've partnered with GE, which we're going to be announcing pretty soon, which ties into the theme of the previous panel of power generation and how we can really boost in the infrastructure requirement that we have across the continent. And that's going to be another important angle. Again, creating a combination of global and local. As Mara, we have a platform called Mara Shopping, which is our e-commerce business. When you think and just sit back and think about how the e-commerce drive is going to impact our continent, last year, $1 billion was spent on our continent in online shopping. $1 billion. In 8 to 9 years, that billion is going to be $75 billion of online shopping across Africa. When you think about Lagos, 20 million people and 3 shopping malls, how is retail ever going to work? And we're going to, again, truly leapfrog in the real sense. It's not going to be a luxury. where you get a parcel and you order things through your phone, it's going to be something quite normal. Or our grandmother in our village can actually order something, pay for it using her phone, and get it delivered with a drone one day. And I think that's what we want to see happen. But truly creating a marketplace like Mara Shopping is trying to do, which will enable global brands to plug in and sell locally, but more importantly, enable local brands to plug in and sell nationally, regionally, and globally. That's going to be the game-changing factor. So something we're extremely, extremely excited about. But taking a step back, you know, when you think about all these different things, I mean, we as entrepreneurs and as businesses, as African businesses particularly, have to think big and we have to be bold. We have to take it to the next level now. This is the only way this is going to work. I was at an SAP Global CEO Summit where they had about 70 of the Fortune 100 CEOs. It's a very small group, and I spoke about our e-commerce ambitions and what we're going to be doing. And one of the CEOs, no names mentioned, came to me afterwards and said, you know, I think this is fantastic, it's great. We've got a lot of donations of, you know, used clothes that we've kind of gathered from within the group. Can we put it on your e-commerce platform? And I looked at him and thought, you know, this is not a CSR initiative, and this is where that perception has to change. This really does have to change. We are going to create a huge digital business across the continent, which is going to be game-changing. We need to change this narrative of snapping out of what exists right now. And I think it's our responsibility to do so.
The final debate for the day was about Africa's trade and investment outlook. This debate highlighted Africa's rising borrowing costs, weakening commodity prices, and exchange rate instability. 2015 was a challenging year for Africa.
Could you give us an overview of where we're at the moment? Are you optimistic? Is it in a good place? How easy is it to do business on the continent?
I think what we've done is we've gone through a period where there was a lot of hype about Africa over the last few years. And then in 2015, we've got into a slight wake-up call, a reality call here. And it was driven predominantly by the collapse of the exchange rates, I think, around Africa by and large last year. That has a huge impact on sentiment as well as on dollar-euro bottom line for a lot of companies who are now having to work out how to do with it. And it's been dragged into this year, although for some countries, certainly in East and Southern Africa, we've seen more exchange rate stability. We're still dealing with a lot of shortages of foreign exchange across the continent. So, you know, the whole of the last 3 months, 4 months of this year, I've spent my time talking to businesses in Angola, Nigeria, and Algeria as the big 3 culprits of that, never mind Egypt as well, which is a slightly different kettle of fish, I say, how you get money in and out of the continent. And that is affecting people. But I think the optimistic side is it's a wake-up call. What we've seen in the last 6 to 9 months is a reality check on the whole story, which I think is very crucial to how we think about Africa going forward, and how promising it is as a business environment, but how many complexities it still has underneath that, and how you balance those two out will be very important going forward. I think from a purely business and thinking in our perspective here of a trade and investment side to it, I think what is really crucial is it starts to make people think a little bit. In the boom years, you could perhaps set up an operation in Dubai and you could import things and run them in and out. Now you're going to have to think a little bit about what I can manufacture in Africa. Can I use that manufacturing to export, which gives me a supply of dollars that then offset if there's problems on the exchange rate, and how I balance out what local currencies are doing on me going forward. And fundamentally, whether the currency moves we've seen start to make Africa more competitive on the global scale, which I think will be very interesting going forward.
Geoffrey, I want to come to you. Agility, you're currently developing distribution parks across the continent. You're clearly optimistic. What are your thoughts on the future of the landscape?
So I think there's a couple of things, and I agree a lot with what you say. I mean, I think there's been a correction, but as a company that does global logistics for big multinationals all around the world, what we've definitely seen over the last couple of years is an awakening of interest to go to Africa. So I think that's driven by 2 things. One is people understanding the market and the demographics better and how much Africa is growing and potentially. And in stark contrast to that, how difficult they're finding it in their traditional demographics and the traditional markets that aren't expanding anymore very quickly and are slowing down. So every CEO around the world is saying, you've got to look for growth, you've got to look for growth. And as a result of that, end up looking at Africa. So from our perspective, to sort of look at that, we've got 65,000 global customers. And we have a huge number of them saying, we would like to do business in Africa, but there's no infrastructure available to enable us to do business. And it sounds really simple, but what we're doing is we're building 70, 100-acre distribution parks across the continent that bring our global standards, what we do in Sydney, what we do in Phoenix, what we do in New York, what we do in Zurich and London, into the African continent.
Fantastic. Alain, I'll come to you next, because you guys have been in Africa for sort of over 40 years, a family-run business. You're in every country on the continent. What's your take on the future?
If you have a global strategy in Africa, so irrespectively of what you are facing here and there, and it's changing. As a French citizen, I was promoting Ghana. I was saying to my colleague, forget about the French-speaking country. Freedom, business, and expansion have to be in Ghana. You need to cross the border and stop to stay in the French-speaking country and go to Ghana. And during 5 or 10 years, I was myself promoting this English-speaking country where we were, because they found oil, education was good, fiscal was good, not too much corruption, not too much pressure, and that was during 10 years. And within 1 year, or overnight, things have changed in Ghana completely.